I'm Richard Taylor and I'm here outside the Guildhall in Cambridge. The first public meeting of the members of the Greater Cambridge City Deal Board is about to take place. The first tranche of City Deal money is £100 million, which in itself is significant, but there could be up to £1 billion to be spent in the city under the City Deal.
I haven't come brief with any particular sort of welcome or announcements, but
No, it's not very good.
welcome everybody. Perhaps we could just go around the table and do a few introductions as well, which might be useful. So, in the pattern that we've adopted for the shadow boards, we've been rotating the chair. So, as the meeting is in Cambridge City, I'm chair of today's meeting. We have some discussions, including on the format of our meetings. One of the proposals is to actually bring a short report to the last of the shadow board meetings, which is the December one, which would actually just outline the shape of our agenda, so that we have a sort of standard pattern of agenda. Because being a shadow board, we don't physically exist, although it seems that we exist. So from the first meeting in January, we will exist, and we obviously have a constitution that's now been adopted by all of the councils now, as well as consulted on with the universities and the LEP. So we have a constitution for the boards from the 1st of January, and it's right that at our December meeting we look at some of the fine detail of that, including the format of the agendas. Is that okay with the people? Okay. In terms of just the domestics, I'm not aware of any fire practice today, so there is an alert, it's real, and there's stairs in different directions. This is the first open meeting of the shadow board, and there's potential, I think, also for a meeting of the shadow assembly before the end of the year, now that the membership of that is largely coming together. I can't think of any other further announcements. I think the only other point in terms of the agenda that we will put together at the December meeting is there is provision for public questions within that agenda, so we will just come up with what would be a standard agenda. And also one that's business-like, so that it would just note the minutes of the previous meetings rather than dwell on them for a long period of time. So, if I could just welcome you all and just perhaps ask some introductions. I'm firstly on the leader of the City Council, so if we just walk around the table, just people can introduce themselves.
Okay. Councillor Ian Bates, I'm Chairman of the Economy and Environment Committee at Cambridgeshire County Council. Steve Count sends his apologies and I'm substituting for him today.
I'm Ronan, I'm leader of South Cambs District Council.
I'm Jeremy Sanders, Pro-Vice Chancellor for the University of Cambridge, representing the university.
My name is Greg Callahan from Peterborough Associates. I represent the university on advising them on transport issues.
I'm Debbie Gidland and I work for Major Infrastructure Delivery for Cambridgeshire County Council.
I'm Mark Miller and I work for Cambridgeshire County Council on their communications.
Mark Lloyd, Cambridgeshire County Council Chief Executive.
Aaron Miller, Project Manager at Cambridgeshire County Council.
Ren Hughes from the County Council.
Jean Hunter, Chief Executive, South Cambridgeshire.
Alex Collier, Executive Director at South Cambridgeshire.
Andrew, County Council.
Elizabeth Acton, Chief Executive for Cambridge City Council.
Graham Watts, Democratic Services from South Cambridge District Council.
Thank you, and obviously around this table are people who've done an awful lot of work in bringing forward the City Deal. So we've got an agenda, so we've already had apologies from Councillor Steve Camp. Any other apologies? No?
Apologies have been received also from Antoinette Jackson, Chris Marion, and also Neil Darwin, all debates.
Okay, just to let the meeting know that we're in regular contact with Antoinette, who's had a serious operation, and she's recovering well. And she also has played a big role in this joint enterprise. So we can move on to the notes of the previous meeting, which, when we become a board in full, will be minutes. I think it's worth just briefly going through them in that we've got several items where we're going to make further progress. So on housing, that notes the discussions that took place, particularly between South Cambridgeshire and the university in terms of potential housing development. On skills, so I don't know if there's any points on item 4. Item 5, we're certainly challenged by the need to develop a response on skills, and it's good to see some of the membership of the Assembly that's coming forward, in that we've got the principal of the Cambridge Regional College and also the head of the University Technical College, so there could well be a role for the Assembly to contribute on the skills agenda, but certainly on skills more widely, it's a matter for further discussion, I think, with government and others in terms of the devolution agenda. Stakeholder engagement we have again on the agenda, and we've got 4 timetabled meetings, which I presume that there's going to be publicity on, further publicity on. We've got any update on those specific 4 meetings?
On the briefings?
Yeah.
We were just going to open those up to the briefings, the first 2 were going to be just for key stakeholders, so we won't be able to promote them any more widely than the invitation to those people.
Okay.
And the 3rd meeting is, as you know, part of the parish planning forum, so we'll just be attending that meeting to give an update on the city deal to the parish councils of South Cambridge. And the 4th meeting will be for resident associations. So again, we won't be opening the briefings any more widely than that to start off.
Well, could we let the media know when the meetings are, and also because we've got, as we've got today, we've got people that report and share information. So if we could let those people that we know attend meetings and cover them, to let them know when they are, so they can attend if they want.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So we've got a fuller report on stakeholder engagement, and then we've got the completion of the report on the detail of the city deal, which presumably we'll get an update on in December. Andrew? Okay. And we certainly want to make sure some of that fine detail is addressed. And we've got an update on the overall economic assessment on our agenda. Okay, any other issues people want to raise? One issue there, we weren't very clear at the last meeting about who's going to lead on arranging the meeting with Stagecoach. So if I propose that you have
Chairman, I've spoken to Stagecoach, so if you're comfortable, I will then council updates and get meetings sorted in diaries.
Yeah, we definitely want a meeting before the next.
I've already had a conversation with Stagecoach.
Okay. Right. And then, as the minutes note, the first formal meetings are in January, but as I mentioned, we're hopeful that there will be a Shadow Assembly meeting in December, and we've seen reference to that in a couple of documents, so if the dates of that can also be made public, as well as the dates that's in the diary of the 10th of December for the last Shadow Board meeting. Thank you. I'll pass on now. Item 4, the economic assessment update.
Chair, I think as we discussed last time, we've had some feedback through the Cabinet Office from Treasury on previous submissions, so we took that on board and responded with an updated submission. I think we're due to get some feedback on that from the Treasury and the Cabinet Office later today. I expect I'll have a brief phone call before we need that. So I think we are still in negotiation, as you say, I'm very much hoping that that will be resolved sooner rather than later.
Okay, so we've got a significantly valuable resource from the university to assist us in that, and clearly we have a continuing case both in devolution discussions but also for the city deal in being clear on the gross value added that that this investment achieves. Item 5, communication strategy. Do you want to introduce the paper that's on the agenda?
Thank you, Chair. We have a slight change to the paper, and it's only slight. There's a paragraph that's dropped off, I think, of the other things that you have. It's paragraph 4. I want to make sure you've got the complete picture.
So what's paragraph 4.1?
Yeah.
It's just the introductory paragraph to the communications protocol, which is just slipped under the key messages. I can read it out if that would help us. It's just...
It starts off... It starts off setting out communications protocol. From the start, we'll have to set out a process for agreeing and enabling timely and accurate communications. The suggested way of moving forward has been set out below. We just want to make sure you've got the accurate paper rather than you have in front of you some draft proposals for communications strategy. It's a draft approach. Looking around the table, I don't think I need to highlight the importance of good communications around the city deal. What we've tried to do, working with partners, is set out some protocols, some key messages using the priorities and visions that have been set out as part of the process, and to agree a way forward to streamline communication processes so that we can coordinate everything and that it's communicated in the way you would expect and that everything is forward planned. We've outlined some of the challenges that we have here, but by no means is this an exhaustive list. Some of the issues obviously are to make sure that the meetings, the first one is public, that we communicate that, and that we do it in a timely fashion, and that the democratic processes seem to be done properly, and people have not only the ability to engage in it, but the ability to engage in the various things that the city deal will be delivering on the ground. We know that we have all the traditional methods of communication that we have, but also if you look across, there's Puffles' friend, I'm not saying Puffles, but Puffles' friend over here, I'm Richard Taylor, so we have to take into account the needs of people blogging, social media, and making sure that we encourage that, and that we engage with that in the best way so they can see what we're doing. There are two kind of strands running here, in that we have to promote the city deal, help people understand what we're doing and why we're doing it, but also some of the scheme specifics. As we come closer to delivering some of the good stuff that the city deal should be delivering, then there will be a lot of community engagement and making sure that's properly planned for, developed, and in a streamlined process, and that people get the timely and best opportunity to engage with that, and that you get the ability to understand and see what people are talking to you about. So we've given you the paper. What we'd like, what the recommendations are, is to agree the general approach. You can see some suggested protocols that we've put forward. What we'll do is, once we've agreed the general approach, we'll come forward with probably some more detail once it's circulated and to be agreed upon. Some suggested key messaging, as I said before, that underlines the vision of the city deal, and that at the back you'll notice there is a item 5 at the back, resource coordination. Here we're talking about making sure that communications are properly coordinated, and that there may be the need of a resource to do that, rather than having several people running around doing it, and you'll need one person to make sure that the things that you ask for is done, delivered, and you see it happening. However, I understand that a further paper will be coming on sort of resources, and so that will be encapsulated in that. Hopefully that sums up, I think, what's in the paper here.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Any questions? Comments? I mean, I would make the point that quite a lot of the communication budget will be directly related to specific transport schemes. So we obviously need to look at the costs there in terms of the schemes. But it does raise the need for the three councils in particular, just to have a look at their communications budgets and see how that aligns with the communications work we're already doing. And as you already said there, Mark, we've got a range of different media, so we need to make sure that we engage with it more of the media. Right?
Chairman, thank you. Just really to, I think very straightforward point, the assumption is the way that the county office works is that actually anything to do with engagement or communication on a specific transport scheme is part of the capital funding, so we're not, in the reference that Mark makes to resource, we're not looking for additional resource to fund that, because that would be part of the main CDO funding. It's only if members of this board decide there's specific additional resource around the general costs is necessary. So that's an issue for another day. So detailed scheme specific stuff will be part of the main funding.
Okay, thank you. Ray?
Yeah, it just strikes me, Chairman, that the biggest problem is getting the communications out in a timely manner. If we have a meeting, it takes a long while at the moment for each of the three members in the university and everybody to agree. So we've got to have some sort of system, possibly at the end of the meeting, that whoever's responsible for the communications, we agree a press release before we leave the room, because otherwise it can take days to get anything done.
So maybe I'd answer that point. I agree completely. It's something that we need to look at. Hopefully the protocols will help. Again, as part of that forward planning, that if we sit down with you and see what's coming ahead, what does need communicating, then we can have all of that stuff ready for you to have a look at after a meeting. Obviously, taking into account that things can change at a meeting to make sure that we can be much more quick around the ball for you.
Just on Ray's point, before I bring you in, Councillor Bates, just suggest maybe if we have as our standard items on the forward plan, we just have forward plan and communications, so that we just have that as a way of following up at the end of each of the agendas. But so we'll bring it into the shape of the standard agenda that we bring forward for the December. Sorry, Councillor Bates.
Rather than continue with the general approach and the key messages and we go forward, I think the devil is going to, apologies, the devil is in the detail, particularly when you get to particular schemes, whether they're housing schemes or skills or transport. So I think actually it's not so much today, but maybe when we get into some greater detail down the line. So I think actually this is a good start. And the but really is we need to actually communicate that when we get closer to some of the things. Like lots of consultation, always attract some interest.
Professor Sanders.
Chairman, recognising the difficulty, nevertheless it's important that the communications to all the members of the board and the officers are efficient well ahead of the meeting. We need to consult our colleagues, especially as we come towards making decisions. We will be needing to consult colleagues, and getting papers just the day before isn't really going to work. But we do need good lead time for important documents. And I know that's difficult.
Well, I think that's a fair point. I think we're now in the open, and we've been fairly informal in developing the city deal. We need to have a clearer structure, and part of that, and we've had discussions with Andrew Lim and others, we will have a clearer project management structure in place before we start full meetings, and there will be clear leads on the different aspects, whether it's transport or skills or housing, and we will be meeting the full expectations of having documents out in advance. So that way we are both efficient and also transparent. Any other points? I think particularly in the early phase, the large amount of communications will be on transport and so it will be funded that way. But I do think we need to admit that the three councils need to review the funding of communications work, just to check that we've got adequate provision. I don't envisage that the communications budget will be major, but we just need to have a provision there, because we do have to have effective engagement. The transport funding that Greg Hughes is leading on will provide us with significant opportunities for really effective engagement and consultation on each of the potential projects, but there are other agendas here, as Councillor Bates has mentioned, both the skills, the housing agenda, and the potential that with devolution that there might be other items that we want to take forward. We've also been discussing the digital agenda and a couple of other potential issues, so we just have to be ready to communicate well. But each of us has our own resource within the councils, and those are also to be used. So in front of us, unless there's any other items people want to raise, I don't know if the Levin's got any views on this item. So we've got recommendations in front of us on page 7. So we're recommended to agree the general approach, the protocol key messages, and we've got the issues then to be followed up on this last bullet point as well. Are the people here in agreement? Jeremy, for the university, are you happy with this? Yeah. On the left? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I think we've got agreement to that. We might as well have it visibly shown. All those in favour? Any against? Thank you. So that's item 5, and then we move on to update on other work streams on page 13. So who's going to take us through this?
Well, I'll start. Sorry, thank you, Chair. I'll start. We've got communication strategies presented to be updated out, and I think you just heard that you all agreed with the draft strategy and that the stakeholder engagement, as Debbie referred to, will happen over the next few weeks. The draft presentation looking around, which I'll share with the other leaders who've been head up those specific audiences. I think that's progressing well.
So on that, Mr. Lynn, we've got 2 breakfast briefings and 2 evening briefings early December, and there will be both a member opening to those and transport focus to the rest of the content. Yeah? Okay. Finance.
Well, we haven't identified any progress here, but I think it's worth noting that I think both in South Cambridgeshire's and County Council's medium-term financial strategies, we've identified some principles for identifying contributions to the City Deal funding from within our own resources. I understand that the City Council is considering its plans in that regard as well. So hopefully by the time we get to our December meeting, we'll have some bit more to report to you at that point.
Yeah, as part of our budget development, we will be looking at the new Homes Bonus resource in particular, and having a dialogue with the 3 councils to agree the additional funding that will supplement the core of the £100 million. Governance framework?
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Well, as I think you mentioned, the terms of reference and standard orders for the Assembly and the Executive Board are progressing through the various councils. So it's been through City Council, Full Council, and supported. I think it's going to South County Council next week and County Council in mid-December. So again, progressing as planned.
And that doesn't, the fact that the county has a meeting on the 16th won't preclude us having a shadow board meeting, because that will be an informal meeting.
Just to report that it has been to the Constitution and Ethics Committee of the County Council and also to the E&E Committee. The one issue which came out really was about a very small point, which is about substitutions on the Assembly. And that really was the only issue that came out of those 2 meetings substantially. I don't recall any other particular issues. program's going to tell me something different.
For me to do that. It's just that there was also an issue about proportionality and so which needs to be dealt with. Both of those issues, as Councillor Benson said, will be dealt with. We can then deal with within the timescale, so it shouldn't affect the chair on the timescale in that line.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, well, thank you for the extra work that was put into that. I think we've got a good framework, but obviously it may be that we review it after a period of time. Councillor Manning.
South Cambs Cabinet have discussed it and we're content with it, and we've put a recommendation in to full council, so we don't envisage there being any problems. Don't think there was any issues arose. We were content with what was on the paper.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there was discussion at the City on similar turf to the issues that Councillor Bates raised, but I think there are answers to the approach that's been proposed. And it's good to see the level of nominations for the Assembly. It looks to be a very effective grouping, and we will need to discuss with the Assembly how we operate to make the full use of the skills and the qualities that the Assembly is going to bring to the City deal as well. Housing.
Thank you, Chair. Probably after the date of the papers were issued, but it's probably worth noting that South Cambridgeshire's Cabinet last week approved the appointment of the post to lead on bringing forward the housing development vehicle, and we're interviewing for that post later this week, hopefully. And it's probably worthwhile just noting the words that are on this update, which is we're very much hoping that as part of the briefings we'll be able to give you some news of the first rural exception site that we'll be able to bring forward as part of the City deal as well, which I think we'll be quite excited about. Can't share that with you today, but hopefully by the time we get to December, we'll be able to put that into the public domain.
Obviously subject to funding and planning and a number of other aspects, but I think what is really good is not just that the three councils share a commitment to deliver on the 1,000 affordable homes promise, which came without any assistance from government, but given that they didn't at the time approve the lifting of the HRA cap or other proposals, but nevertheless what is really strong is the commitment of all three councils and also the interest of the university in that delivery. Professor Sanders?
So just to be pedantic, Professor, it's actually the University Finance Committee, not the Investment Committee. The minutes have it right, Register. I mean, as far as the university is concerned, we're keen to get into discussion as soon as we can to see the terms of the joint venture and to see whether it will be possible for us to join in and to invest. We're ready.
Well, I think what we're going to obviously do when we look at the governance is to construct it again so that it can deliver its objectives to build, but also if it can include all of the partners, we want to do that. South Cambs have already set up its own company with a particular agenda, and I think there are opportunities here to have a joint committee and then a delivery group in whatever company or other structure is most appropriate to achieve the objectives. What is clear is that each of the councils has got a resource either of land or funding, as well as the determination to build more affordable homes. Investment.
I'll take this one. So, quite a bit of work on the investment programs. This specifically is looking to identify for the Executive Board meeting in January the proposed list of first 5 year schemes to go forward. So from Complete City, this more schemes are being proposed for that first 5 year period. So to do that work, we've commissioned some consultants to look at potentially benefit from the full range of schemes that form the Complete City Deal package. That work is due to report very early December, and I think the intention is to actually give the Assembly the opportunity to discuss the outcome from that work in early January, pending the prior to the decision by the board at the end of January. So as I say, the focus of that work at the moment is looking at the income benefit that will come from the full range of schemes. From that, officers will prepare a list of benefits to come from those schemes, but advise members clearly it's a decision for the Executive Board and its forwards which schemes come forward. No decision has been taken, although we have identified which schemes we think are likely to provide the greatest benefit, and that's where the consultants, particularly focusing their time with the hour looking at the complete package of schemes. So on that basis, we are on track to allow members of this board to make its decision by the end of January, which is one of the key conditions of the deal document that we signed to inform government of the first 5-year programme by the end of January.
Thank you. I appreciate all the work that's going on there. The timing of in December, the likely timing is for there to be a meeting of to release the analysis, including, as you said, a method of scoring and assessing the different schemes before Christmas. Have we got any idea of roughly the timing?
At the moment, what we've asked the consultants to do, and there's been, because it's a fairly short commission, continuous discussion with them, what we've asked them to do is just the final recommendations to us by the 5th of December. The 5th of December, so there may be a little bit of work sort of around that.
Sure.
They tell us on track, so we're assuming we'll have that by the 5th, and so we'll be able to start sharing that at that point. It very much will be an indication, as I say, a sort of rank order list, I guess, of which schemes are most down to least beneficial to be in that 5-year period, and their decisions will follow from that point.
So whilst you get the consultants' report, then you've still got a job of work to do before it will become public.
There'll still be a bit of work, but I think what we would want to do is think about the Assembly, particularly to share that with members as soon as we possibly can. So debate around the relative merits of each of those schemes can take place.
We have a meeting on the 10th of December, and there is also, I think, a scheduled meeting of the Joint Planning and Transport Committee as well.
That's correct, Chairman, yes.
Okay, well, thanks for all the work. I mean, I think the other issue up clearly is that the original list that we shared this autumn, including through the 3 councils, was a lot bigger and perhaps more hopeful than the sums of funding that we have, in the sense that it outlined up to £200 million worth of schemes. So we clearly need to have clarity exactly how the funding is going to be used. There may in the community be the belief that there's hundreds of millions of pounds involved, but with an expenditure of £100 million, we just have to be clear exactly what is and isn't going to be achieved. Okay, right, the next item is payment by results mechanism.
Well, as reported on the previous agenda item, we're still in negotiation with the government on that aspect. Feedback today, I would expect, tomorrow, which may mean we continue working out how we're getting on with that.
But we've been quite clear for some time about what we believe is a fair approach. Yeah. Okay, then we come back to the brief items we covered also in the notes of the last meeting. Skills, anything to add, Graham?
Thank you, Chair. There's quite a bit of work going on. This is probably one of the areas that still has a little way to go. So we identified a potential mechanism for managing the overall skills commitments that we made through the City Law document, but we're keen to hold discussions which are now arranged with the Learning Skills Council and its representatives to identify whether there are not actually better ways of more locally influencing how skills are actually delivered and how particularly priority skills are delivered in this area. So we do have a proposition that was included within the deal document. We think we'd like to investigate with the Learning Skills Council whether there are better ways of actually delivering that. So that meeting is planned, I think it's late this month, or certainly I think by the end of this month. It's been firmed up, I think it's just about to be firmed up between Chief Executive representatives, our Head of Learning and our skills, and the key regional representative of the Learning Skills Agency. So that hopefully will shape the final mechanism that will come forward to the board again for decision making. In the meantime, work is also underway around delivering, because there were two key elements of the skills commitment. There was the apprenticeships and then it's referred to as the skills team. And so the apprenticeship, there is work underway in parallel with the governance work that I just referred to around how those additional 420 apprenticeships over 5 years can be delivered.
Okay, anything to add on schedules? Certainly that target, yes, of 420 apprenticeships is something that we've got some further work to do on. And there's strategic planning in terms of the link to shared services. I'm aware that there's been continuing discussions because there is benefits to all three councils, particularly to South Cambridgeshire ourselves in developing a shared service on planning. Any items to add on this?
I think, as you say, those discussions are ongoing, and clearly the desire is to make as efficient as possible to with both planning strategy and transport strategy. So there will be further papers to the board, but the work between the key officers and three councils is currently ongoing.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you for all the work that's involved in that. And then, unless there's any other points, if we move on to item 7. So, we've got the next meeting is proposed to be in Camborne, chaired by my colleague, Councillor Manning. So the agenda that we've got there is the Assembly workshop in terms of the shadow Assembly meeting in December, the economic assessment, and just a continuing update on progress ahead of the big items in January on the first 5 years infrastructure programme and the transport budget under the city deal. Any other items you want to raise or suggest for the future work programme?
Chair, you mentioned earlier about the desire to kind of have a look at the smart and digital kind of aspects of economic activity in the sub-region, and the County Council suggested we might have a workshop for board members potentially after we've got through the initial churn of the transport stuff, maybe sometime in February or March, just to kind of use kind of explore some of the opportunities around that aspect.
Mr. Lloyd?
Just to supplement Mr. Lim's contribution, clearly the transport infrastructure matters hugely, and the early days of the board will be dedicated to coming up with some clever solutions to Greater Cambridge's problems. But I know from all the members that I've talked from a bilateral basis that you're keen that the City Deal presents an opportunity for us to think about lots of things in a different way, and how we can take forward the ambitions for this to be a smart city in every dimension of being smart. I think presents a great opportunity through these arrangements. So as I suggested to Mr. Lim, it would be useful to have a workshop where you have a chance to focus on some of the opportunities that are available to us here in this area, and to see if there are anything you'd like us to put some oomph behind in the future.
Well, I'm conscious of the considerable impact that Connecting Cambridge has had, and the real difference that makes. It certainly, for our view as councillors, has been that there are potentially non-tarmac elements to the city deal in terms of transport solutions and connectivity, which would really make a difference. And so we've got areas of particularly South Cambridgeshire that could do with improvements in broadband, further mobile reception, but just generally we've got large employers that need to be better connected. So I pay tribute to the work that's been done and led by the County Council, and the funding also that's been obtained, but we obviously want to look at some of those solutions further. So we'll leave you to organise that later. Yeah. And it should also be partly reflected in some of the City Deal programme that comes out in January for discussion, but also gets published before Christmas. Any other points on the digital aspect? Any other items for the forward plan?
Chairman, I think we ought to have a housing on it. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
big issue.
Well, yeah, I think we're going to be busy in January. Should we put it onto our February meeting as a formal item? We've got. It isn't going to stop progress because, as you know, 3 councils will all be meeting about a number of these opportunities before then. But if we, given that we've got plenty on our plate for January, I think February.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We're content with it.
Okay. Right. We don't have any other business on the agenda. Thank you for all your contributions and for all the work that's been put in. Obviously, we've got further linkages. We've got a number of meetings coming up in December, and we'll be feeding back the responses that come from those meetings as well. Councillor Mann.
Chairman, I was only going to say to you that the meeting's been fairly brief and we normally have public questions. I just wondered if you've got any member of the public that wanted to ask you a question and if you would be prepared to answer.
I didn't realise you were an agent for the public. I'm very happy if Mr. Carpin or Mr. Taylor or any member of the audience, Mr. Lucas Smith, I see, sorry, Simon Edwards, Michael Wiseman, I think, John Bell, I can just about name most of the members of our audience, but if anybody has any questions, by all means. Mr. Carpin.
I've actually got one here from Sam Davis via Twitter, asking on transport, basically saying yes, but why priority between 2 dedicated business sites, i.e. the Cambridge Science Park and Addenbrooke's, effectively, and wondered if you could expand on what other routes there may be. One of the things that I've been very interested in following the first Be the Change Cambridge Conversation Cafe, which Councillor Herbert very kindly came along to. We had a visitor from the Haverhill Rail campaign. They've got a very well organised campaign there. They get about 50 people turning up to their meetings, and what they want to do is to link Cambridge to Haverhill to Colchester to get a rail link going between Cambridge all the way through to Chelmsford, which would be brilliant for the other university, which is not represented on here, Anglia Ruskin. I speak as a former student of Anglia. We've also got things like the East Anglia Rail Prospectus that was published last year, and I'm wondering to what extent existing studies that have been done, such as the East Anglia Rail Prospectus, are going to be built into things like this, as well as existing schemes such as, for example, the proposals Steve Barclay MP has been leading on with Wisbech Rail. Thank you.
I think there are 3 questions there I've got. So I don't know if Councillor Bates, you want to start on the response, and then perhaps Graham Hughes can answer it and others can chip in.
I'll do it in reverse order then.
Go on then.
Okay, Wisbech to Cambridge. Okay, there was a successful meeting last week where the MP was present, where the work group 2, apologies for all the acronyms, is started and well on the way. There has been, thank you to the left for the money which will be coming forward to deliver considerable work in access to the Wisbech area. So the answer really is we are already on the case for GRIP 2, but obviously as you will appreciate there's GRIP 3, 4, 5 and before you get to any big building. So it is on our agenda, work is started on GRIP 2, that will progress. Can I just perhaps mention a little bit about East-West Rail? Okay, for those that don't know, currently Oxford to Bedford is being constructed at the moment, and the central section, which is from Bedford through to Cambridge and further east, that has had its first inaugural meeting in Ipswich, and that consists of 8 councils: Luton, Bedford, Central Beds, Ipswich Borough, Hertfordshire, Norfolk, Suffolk and Cambridgeshire. Hopefully that tops up to 8.
Yeah.
And that has had its inaugural meeting 3 weeks ago. I'm duly elected as the chairman of that. There was a meeting last week with the parliamentary, all-party parliamentary group as well in London. That's chaired by Milton Keynes, MP, and that was a successful launch. I have written to Mr Osborne, if you like, along that line, and I think that has been circulated to all of the councils. So that's what I call ongoing. That's a long-term strategic issue, East West Rail, particularly the central section, because to deliver something from Bedford through to Cambridge, and hopefully, of course, remember Ipswich and Norwich, of course, quite key as well on going and linking it. But it's also interesting, obviously, to link it into, as I think some people call it, Golden Triangle, which would include London as well. So that's East West Rail. I'm certainly aware of the Haverhills and the MP for Haverhill as well, desire in that respect as well. And I think that all those discussions are taking place and ongoing. The important bit really is it is long term, very long term, but I think all the hopes are that there is some interest in Whitehall or East West Rail. Quite where it's going in the longer term, I think it's too early to call, but I'm sure, for instance, that people like Matthew, the MP for Haverhill, will be on the case, as they would say. Sorry, I forget which was the last bit of the question. Does that answer it all?
Yes.
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 Apologies for that taking too long.
No. I mean, this is a good opportunity. I don't know, Mr. Hughes, if you've got anything to add. I mean, clearly, in terms of the early answer for improving links between Cambridge and Haverhill, it's about the priority given to public transport, particularly on the access into Cambridge. And you presumably it's also worth there, Mr. Hughes, adding a bit also about the other schemes, because there are other major infrastructure projects that we need to at least include as part of the communication, because those are going ahead in the county anyway.
Chairman, I think just briefly on the Haverhill issue, we're aware and have been for years and years and years of the campaign down there. Clearly, a rail link would be very attractive. I think just to I suppose elaborate on what Councillor Bates said, I mean, there are some really significant issues which I think we need to be mindful of that we need to be overcome. So, for example, a significant amount of the original track that had been sold off has been built on. So, the classic rail reopening, which, as Councillor Bates said, what we're looking at between Marshall Wisbech and Cambridge is not possible on the Haverhill routes. You'd be looking at the Virgin rail route, which is much more difficult than just reopening. It's not to say it wouldn't be a good thing if it could be done, but there are some hurdles. I'll come back to that if I can just a second, Chair, to the point you made about other schemes, but maybe just to return to your point, because you talked about why specifically that we singled out the North. You talked about the North.
I'm just feeding a question back.
So what we have said is specifically linking the Science Park, which is to the north of Cambridge, with our medical campus, which is to the south of Cambridge. And I think that the simple answer to the question, there's probably a couple of relatively simple answers. One is that we need to remember it's a 15-year or so programme, so whilst we've got to focus on something for the first 5 years, just because something isn't included in that 5-year period doesn't mean it isn't important to work on later on. So that's the first point. I think the second point, probably, if we go back to, if you like, the key objectives of the city, the principal objectives are about improving the connectivity. And so what employers in this area, particularly businesses, tell us is that they have difficulty getting workers at all because of the affordability in the area, but they also have a difficulty in moving workers when they are able to come and work here to the places of employment and moving between places of employment. So the strategy is very much around getting people from where they're going to be living into the key employment sites and particularly between the key employment sites. So around Cambridge there are 3 or 4 centres around the edges of Cambridge, and there are clusters, particularly to the south. And so over the 15-year period, the strategy will look to link up all of those through the orbital route around Cambridge and then improvements to the rating. So it's part of an ongoing package, and as Councillor Herbert said, that also needs to be seen in the context of other schemes that are taking place. So, for example, another one of the drivers for focusing on that particular linkage is we already have busway. We expect Science Park Station to come on stream in about 2016. So if we can bring forward, as well as the A14 as well, we can bring forward the connection between those other pieces of infrastructure planned or already delivered with the city deal infrastructure, we get a real significant joint-up benefit, if you like, in terms of connectivity, which is what we're able to achieve. So that's the kind of shortish answer. There's a lot more work behind it, but that's
I think part of it for the city is that we funnel a huge number of buses and traffic right the way through the city centre, and our bus operator is also focused on that as their sort of main highway, and to actually improve the capacity of public transport and options for people in the city. There needs to be those other routes. So, I mean, for instance, we've been talking to the LEP and working with the LEP on some of their growth fund bids, and including a bid for the cycle bridge as part of the LEP's priority. So it really does matter for Cambridge to function, but that people can actually get from different corners without always going through the city centre and having to change buses. So I think that part of the thinking is just to make the city work better and for it to be easier for all of those non-car journeys.
Rail Future just tweeted as well, asking if that north-south link very much had rail in consideration and not just cycling, as in.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't mentioned the A14, but we haven't mentioned some of the work that we would like to progress. The interest in there being a station at Addenbrooke's, which at the time of the choice of the Chesterton Science Park Station was also a potential runner. So I think we are not out of the game in bidding for other resources for transport. So the city deal is not, this is £100 million in Greater Cambridge, just go away. There's a large number of other projects, and they link with other projects across the county. Did we cover that one, at least for now?
Yeah.
Okay. Then any other questions anybody wants to ask? Again, Mr. Carlton.
This one's actually about education and skills, because I was at a school governors meeting last night. I'm a governor at a local primary school, and one of the things I'm picking up in South Cambridge, which is where I live, speaking to teachers, head teachers and governors, is we've got a new steer from the Department for Education to effectively reconstitute governing boards, where rather than representing all areas of the community, it's very much a skills-based one. And the concern there, and I think a couple of schools locally are finding this to be a challenge, is being able to source enough people with the right professional skills to ensure that you've got a strong enough governing body to hold the head teachers to account. And this is something that not just my school is finding a bit of a challenge, but schools across the area are also finding challenging. I just wondered if anyone from the County Council could comment on perhaps a future citywide approach to getting people, in particular with more professional skills such as legal skills and HR skills in particular, to put themselves forward for being governors.
I think we're stretching what our city deal can assist with, but as we're here, I don't know if Mr. Lloyd can respond.
Chairman, it's a great question. Let's not forget that school governors are one of the largest groups of volunteers in the country and indeed in the land, and they give an awful lot back to their community. And the trick that we're always trying to pull off in helping schools to construct boards of governors is to ensure that the school maintains its linkage with its community, whilst coupled with having a set of people around that table who can really help with the leadership and to some degree the management of a school. And the demand on school governors have increased enormously over recent years, and I see no decrease likely in the demands that they face. So we're always looking for more, Chairman, and we're frequently running campaigns to try and attract governors, often in concert with particular schools. But if Mr. Hutton's idea is that we can do more together to attract a bigger pool of people particularly from our business sectors, our higher education, further education to serve in schools, I think would be a great campaign to run.
There is a useful linkage there in that the City Deal includes a commitment to contribute to the skills agenda, and one of those important areas which does cross into your question is the need for there to be a greater integration between the business community and the city and schools, because both can learn much and reshape each other's agendas. So that is one of the ways that it would be good. And so we would hope to encourage more people who are involved in some of the most high growth sectors of the Cambridge economy to get involved working with the really high quality schools that we've got, both primary and at secondary. We did, the three leaders did get a letter from a range of principals also, raising a number of issues on the skills agenda, and that's another item that will progress, is that dialogue with the secondary schools. Any more?
I'm sorry that I opened this.
We've got time for another question.
Right, okay, but I'm going at 3.
Final one from me.
It's fine. There've been good questions.
And this is really on the, shall we say, on the strategic planning issue, but from a project and programme management perspective. For those of you who are not familiar with me, I spent 7 years in the civil service, 5 of which in Whitehall at the Department of Communities and Local Government. So local government reform is one of my former policy areas, so I'm particularly interested in this, as well as Cambridge being my hometown. So yeah, we can have a lot of fun with that. One of the things with the project that I'm running called Be the Change Cambridge, which I spoke at both at full council, at city council and also at county council level, is there are a lot of people who are becoming more interested in the future of our city, and I'm pleased that the speeches we heard earlier said there's going to be much greater transparency and also use of social and digital media to keep people involved. I'm just wondering if perhaps for future meetings we can have some more detail on how people can get involved, whether it's at meetings or whether it's, for example, with some of the tools that you use, so we can all sequence all of the various things that we're running. And that's it from me.
Well, as you can see, you've seen us in the raw. We've been at a meeting which has been making progress with officers. From now on, it is in the public domain. As the officers from the county council introduced, there'll be engagement meetings with all the residents' associations and parish councils across the area before we make detailed decisions on the transport. So the commitment here is to be open and to engage. And separately, the county councils initiated a discussion between the councils across the county, and I'm sure each of the different councils will contribute to that. And we would obviously welcome input from residents on that agenda. The City Deal marks a great opportunity for partnerships. It's also a recognition from government that if Greater Cambridge is going to deliver for its residents, we need to have the devolution of powers. So, and we're working with it in a partnership which includes the universities and business. So, and the community will have its input into that. So, thank you for your questions.
Thank you.
And there will be a lively debate, particularly when it comes to some of the transport schemes that come forward, but also into each of the areas of delivery. And I just thank all of the people that have contributed to bringing us this far. There's still a long way to go.